I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Well, hello there, nature nuts. Guess what? Today, our subject is flies. Isn't that exciting? Let me tell you, when I told my wife we were doing a show about flies, she said, "Flies? That's gonna be the most boring show ever." And I told our producer, and she said, "Flies? You're gonna do a show about flies? Why bother?" After all, I mean, most flies, they're kind of boring. They're kind of dull looking, like house flies, or these little shore flies that are all around here. Dull brown flies. What are they good for? Tiger beetle food, that's about it. But there are some really neat flies in this world, and I'm going to show you the neatest flies that I can find. Flies are, yeah, they're not that bad. What do I mean by flies? Technically, a fly is an insect with 2 wings. I mean, most flying insects have 4 wings, but flies, the back wings have been modified to form things called hull teeters. They look a lot like a little fly swatter with a blob on the end of a stick, and they wiggle them up and down, and it tells them what's a balance organ. Gives them some sense of which way is up and down and sideways. Very cool. That's what we mean by flies. Insects in the order Diptera. Diptera means 2 wings. Flies. Let's go again.
Most flies have 2 wings, but some parasitic flies have no wings at all.
So I remember when I was a graduate student studying tiger beetles, one of my best friends was a guy named Brian, and he was studying little phorid flies that lay their eggs in the body of dead slugs. And I said, "Brian, why did you pick flies? Why didn't you pick something cool like beetles or butterflies?" And he said, no, there's lots of amateur naturalist types who really like flies. They usually get into it by collecting hoverflies or robber flies or bee flies. And, you know, it's a pretty popular thing. Now, not that I've ever met one of these people, but I decided that I would try it myself. I'd get into bee fly collecting because some bee flies are actually parasites of tiger beetles. This is a good place for tiger beetles. Lots of open sand. There's a couple tiger beetles mating over there, and there are bee flies all around us here. They're quite nifty looking flies. A lot of them look like little delta wing jet fighter planes. Anyway, let me show you my bee fly collection. It's one of the smallest bee fly collections in the history of science, but I'm quite proud of it. There's some from Saskatchewan, some from right here, and that big one, that's from Ecuador. That's an Ecuadorian bee fly. Now, they're, you know, pretty good looking bee flies, but I never really stuck to bee fly collecting because I found it a bit frustrating, and I'll show you why. We got bee flies everywhere here. No, that didn't work. Get out of there. There, that's more like it. Every time I catch a bee fly in a net, almost every time, the head falls off. Look at that. They have the most loosely attached heads in the animal world, and I don't know why that is. So what happens if you're serious about your flies, you have to make a specimen out of it and very carefully glue the head back onto the rest of the fly. And I just felt that that was a bit too much trouble for me when I was an impatient youth. Maybe when I'm old and gray, I'll come back to it. I'll have more patience. I'll identify my bee flies, and I'll learn something about them. Good idea. Hardly wait.
What
what about hoverflies? You've got to like hoverflies. If you want to see hoverflies, basically what you do is you plunk yourself down in the midst of a bunch of flowers, and pretty soon you're gonna see some hoverflies, because just like bees and wasps, they visit flowers and they help pollinate the flowers by moving pollen from one flower to another. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of hoverflies around us right now, and as you can see, they do have a rather wasp-like appearance, but it's kind of a neat thing, isn't it? Because, of course, wasps sting, and hoverflies don't sting, but if hoverflies look like wasps, then birds won't eat them because they don't want to get stung. If they all look the same, then the bird only has to memorize one thing. Never eat anything that's banded black or white or black or yellow, and biologists call this a mimicry complex, but really they should call it a mimicry simplification because it makes things simpler for the birds. Oh, now actually, I'm not sure if this one is a hoverfly or a thick-headed fly. You have to see if it's got a spurious vein in the wing. This fly business becomes quite technical at times, but I do have a really good-looking thick-headed fly here. It's a very, very, very good mimic of a wasp. It looks very waspy, but it has a much bigger head, bigger eyes, and short antennae instead of long antennae like a wasp would have. Magnificent little creature, a thick-headed fly. When hoverflies and thick-headed flies are young, of course, they are maggots. Some of the hoverfly maggots live in the swamp. You know, they're called rat-tailed maggots. They have a long breathing tube. Some of them live up on plants and they eat aphids. But I'm not going to show you any maggots because this is a show about flies and how to get enthusiastic about flies. And boy, you start showing maggots, they're bad for the fly image. Just concentrate on the hoverflies. Admire their beauty.
The first flies appeared about the same time as the first birds, long after the first mammals and dinosaurs.
Well, you know, no show about flies would be complete without a couple of guest fruit flies, and I've got a jar of fruit flies right here. Scientists know so much about fruit flies, it's almost embarrassing. They grow them in the lab. They go through generations very quickly, so you can get zillions of them happening very, very, quickly in short order. And there are all sorts of different strains of fruit flies. They're used primarily for genetic research, but also for other things. Now, these ones are feeding on some kind of professional fruit fly mixture. That's where their little larvae are growing, and the pupa are all over the outside of the jar here. When I grow them, I just put them in banana baby food with a little bit of yeast and some gelatin so that it doesn't, flow out of the jar. And they seem to do very well on that, too. You can raise them to feed to, your hungry little pet baby lizards or something like that. And these ones are especially good. This is a highly inbred mutant kind of fruit fly with little stubs instead of wings and white-colored eyes. Man, this kind of fruit fly wouldn't last a minute out in the wild. But they're kind of interesting. It's only one species, though, that has been the focus of all this intensive research, Drosophila melanogaster. There are lots of other species of fruit flies. I remember some especially cool ones that we saw on a big chunk of fungus in Trinidad. Ooh, they're very weird. They had sort of hammer-headed fruit flies. I think it was the males with the hammerheads and the females looked more normal. Don't ask me why, but they were having a weird time on that piece of fungus. Anyway, if you want a perfect pet fly, this is the one for you, the fruit fly. Of course, you can't really get attached to your pet fruit fly, and you can't tell one fruit fly from another, but, if your fruit fly dies, you're bound to have a couple of thousand more in just a couple of days.
Some bee flies are especially sensitive to the color blue, and they love to visit blue flowers.
Okay, well listen, bee flies are cool and hoverflies are nifty, but if you want a really, really exciting kind of fly,
try out robber flies. Now this is a good place for robber fly. Well, here's a robber fly right here. Nice open spot. Robber flies are extremely vicious flies, and you'll see that this one has
a very powerful thorax for the wings, big long legs. They don't rob things. Well, they do rob things. They rob them of their lives. They'll fly out and they'll catch other insects in midair, even things like tiger beetles, and they kill them and they eat them. So that's a very exciting kind of a fly. Have a look here. Here's one with something that it's eating. Look at that. This robber fly has caught another fly. I'm not sure exactly what kind of other fly, but doesn't much matter because it's dead now. And that, oh boy, it's going to very slowly slurp up the entire contents of that dead fly's body, and that's what they eat. Isn't that neat? Isn't that really kind of neat? Most of the robber flies around here are kind of dull colored like this, although some look like bumblebees, very exciting. But you know, I've got to tell you, if you get down into the tropics, there's a related group of flies called the Midas flies. We saw a Midas fly in Trinidad. It must have been that long. It was huge and beautiful and colored very much like the wasps that feed on tarantulas in that part of the world. So I don't think anything would mess with a big Midas fly. Like, that was the most impressive fly I've ever seen in my life. Which is not to say that this is not an impressive spectacle when you get on it with your close-up binoculars. That's a little bit of fly versus fly. High drama, excitement, life and death in the world of flies. Trying to stir up mosquitoes. Once in my life, I want to be bitten by mosquitoes, because mosquitoes are flies too in the technical sense. And, oh, I feel one on the back of my neck. This is good. There are lots and lots of species of mosquitoes. Oh, here we go. It's a complex subject. In fact, it's only the females that are blood feeders, and they use the blood that they drink from you and I to give them enough nutrition to lay eggs, and the males are off sipping at flowers in a very innocent, inoffensive way. But look at, I mean, this is really interesting what's happening here. I can feel these things biting, and it's quite, you know, it's a sharp pain. Yeah, you've been bitten by a mosquito, you know what I mean. But I won't swell up or get itchy afterwards. I become less sensitive the more mosquito bites I've had. So that might, you know, if you have trouble with mosquitoes, you might grow out of it like I have. But look at how she's got her little proboscis, drilling proboscis, deep into my flesh, and it consists of a couple of very sharp, long blades, stylets, that are usually kept in a protective sheath. And that sheath has been bent back out of the way in a little sort of an elbow bend there. It's very sophisticated. They are extremely elegant creatures, mosquitoes, even though they're irritating as anything. And boy, I'd just love to mash this little critter right now because it kind of hurts. But I want you to see the whole thing close up. Yeah, what else we got here? You know, there's some mosquitoes that feed only on frogs. I mean, there's so many mosquitoes. Actually, I'm looking kind of froggy here, aren't I? I wonder if maybe I can attract one of those rare frog-eating mosquitoes here.
Most flies are totally harmless. The ones that transmit diseases are few. You know, it just occurred to me that some of you might not believe that I'm serious about this, that you should spend some of your own valuable free time watching flies. But the truth is, I do it myself. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't think it was a good idea. I especially like photographing flies with a close-up setup. There's so many neat flies you can find even in your own backyard or in any old little patch of vegetation is loaded with flies, although I don't really know half the time what kind of fly I'm looking at. Sometimes I look at them and I just think, ooh, that's a nice kind of iridescent colored fly. And sometimes I look at them and I think, that's a real fuzzy fly. And sometimes I think, ooh, nice red eyes on that one. If you want to know more about flies, I think this is a very good book. I'm working with this book myself to increase my fly knowledge. It's called the Peterson Field Guide to Insects. You can get it in most fine bookstores, and it'll teach you about the families of flies. Marvelous stuff. We've also found all sorts of interesting flies while we've been making other shows. We found some hoverflies mating in mid-air, just hanging there. Incredible stuff. We got lots of interesting shots of blue bottle flies. You know, the shiny blue ones. When I was a kid, I always used to like, you know, blue bottle fly jokes. Have you ever seen a blue bottle fly? Get it? Guess it would work better if you said flying. It's like that old butterfly joke. Have you ever seen a butterfly cry? Nope, but I've seen a moth ball. Yeah, okay. Anyway, fly watching is worth it. Take my word for it.
Flies, they fly. That's why we call them flies. I'm gonna shout and sing about their two-legged wings. I'm a guy with an eye for a fly. Did you ever see a robber fly soaring out across the sky? Did you wonder why they live and die? Did you ever see a robber fly?
Contrary to popular opinion, flies never vomit on their food. They may spit or drool or puke on their food, but technically they never vomit on their food.
Flies, they fly. That's why we call them flies. I'm gonna shout and sing about their two little wings. I'm a guy with an eye for a fly. Did you ever see a deer fly? Did you ever see a coffin fly? Did you wonder why they live and die? Did you ever see a little fruit fly?
Unlike other insects, flies only have two pairs of wings. The other pair is kept in a huge underground storage vault in the country of Paraguay in case something happens to the first pair.
Did you ever see a blue bottle fly soaring out across the sky? Did you wonder why they live and die? Did you ever see a blue bottle fly? Flies, they fly. That's why we call them flies. I'm gonna shout and sing about their two little wings. I'm a guy with an eye for a fly. Yeah, I'm a guy with an eye for a fly. Yeah, I'm a guy with an eye for a...
All right, come on in there, you little doggies. This is a trick I picked up from professional horsefly wranglers, people who actually study horseflies. Get yourself a black inner tube or a big black balloon. Anything that's shiny and dark that shows a highlight in the sun. Horseflies, they think it's a, I don't know, a black cow or a
round-shaped black pig or something, and they come to feed on it. Horseflies, of course, are blood-feeding flies, just like mosquitoes. But mosquitoes, you know, they have those delicate little blades. Horseflies have big, heavy-duty blades, and horseflies do a tremendous amount of damage when they bite you. They make this big wound and lick up the blood. So I'm not going to let horseflies bite me today. I'm going to show you one that I catch instead. Okay, there we go. Do you hate the way they buzz around, kind of circle, trying to drive you insane before they prey on you? How about that? Got one. Now, one of the fundamental principles of being a nature nut is the belief that every creature, no matter how despicable, has some intriguing, beautiful facet to it, and that is certainly true of horseflies, just like anything else. Oh yeah, here's a beauty. Here's a beauty. Just like mosquitoes, it's only the female horseflies that feed on blood. The males are at flowers, but have a look at this. Now, isn't this just the most gorgeous thing? Look at her eyes. Her eyes have this incredible rainbow in them. The thousands of lenses in the compound eyes, they form a rainbow pattern, and up close it is absolutely stunningly beautiful. So the next time you're at the beach and one of them lands on you, and remember, they like wet skin, nice shiny surfaces, remember that. When one of them lands on you, take a moment to admire those rainbows, and then just mash the little critter. No, I'm just kidding. You know me, I'm a soft-hearted guy. I'm gonna let her go. Okay, go. Don't bite, just go. Go, go. Get out of here. Okay. Horseflies, you gotta love them.
The common housefly is only one of over 100,000 species of flies on Earth.
I hope you've enjoyed our introduction to the world of cool flies. See, they're not all boring after all. I mean, admittedly, they are still flies, and we're not likely to see a lot of fly-based ecotourism or fly-watching lodges or anything like that. But, you know, for those moments when you can't find a good bird to watch, or a frog, or a snake, or a ladybug, or a butterfly, you can almost always find a fly. At least that's how I feel about it. That's why I'm a nature nut. And I hope you are too. See you again soon.
Fly, they fly. That's why we call them flies. I'm gonna shout and sing about their two little wings. I'm a guy with an eye for a fly. Fly, they fly. That's why we call them flies. I'm gonna shout and sing about their two little wings. I'm a guy with an eye for a fly.